The avoidant's journey through a relationship often feels like watching someone sleepwalk toward a cliff edge, unable or unwilling to see the destruction they're leaving in their wake. They navigate intimacy with their defenses raised, their emotional walls fortified, their capacity for connection perpetually limited by fears they cannot name. For months or years, they remain insulated from the impact of their emotional unavailability, protected by psychological mechanisms that keep empathy and accountability at arm's length. But there comes a moment, a breaking point, when the avoidant suddenly sees clearly what they've done. They witness the devastation their pattern has caused in someone who loved them, and the recognition crashes through their defenses with a force that cannot be deflected or denied. This moment doesn't guarantee change or redemption, but it represents a psychological crisis that forever alters how the avoidant sees themselves and their capacity to damage those who dare to love them. The moment they see the light, gone from your eyes. The avoidance awakening often begins not with words, but with a visual recognition they cannot unsee. They look at their partner and witness something fundamentally different. The spark, the hope, the love that once radiated from their eyes has been extinguished. Where there was once warmth directed toward them, there is now emptiness, or worse, indifference. This visual shift penetrates the avoidance defenses in a way that words never could, because they cannot rationalize or dismiss what they're seeing. The psychological impact of this recognition is devastating because it bypasses the avoidant's usual protective mechanisms. They cannot tell themselves that their partner is being too emotional or too dramatic. They cannot minimize the damage by claiming their partner is overreacting. The dead eyes tell a story that requires no explanation and permits no rationalization. Something essential has been broken, and the avoidant is forced to confront their role in that breaking. This moment often occurs during a mundane interaction, a dinner conversation, a morning coffee, a casual glance across the room. The avoidant looks at their partner expecting to see the familiar mix of hope and hurt, love and longing that has characterized their dynamic. Instead, they see nothing. The person who once lit up when they entered the room now looks through them with eyes that hold no expectation, no desire, no emotional investment whatsoever. The contrast is what makes it unbearable. The avoidant suddenly remembers how this person used to look at them, with adoration, with patience, with a willingness to see the best in them despite their emotional limitations. That look sustained the avoidant even as they pushed against it. It made them feel worthy even as they acted in ways that proved them unworthy. And now it's gone, replaced by a flat emotional landscape that reflects back to the avoidant exactly how much they've taken for granted and destroyed. This visual recognition also strips away the avoidant's ability to maintain their narrative that they're not really hurting anyone. They've convinced themselves that their emotional distance is a preference, a boundary, a form of honesty about their limitations. They've told themselves that their partner chose to stay, chose to accept less, chose this dynamic. But the dead eyes reveal a different truth. Their partner didn't choose this. They were slowly worn down, disappointed over and over, hurt beyond their capacity to recover until something inside them simply gave up. The avoidant experiences a rush of emotions they're not equipped to process: guilt, shame, regret, and a terrible recognition of their own destructive power. They've spent their life feeling powerless in relationships, convinced that others want too much from them. But this moment reveals they had tremendous power all along. The power to keep someone hoping, trying, loving, and the power to systematically destroy that hope through their consistent emotional unavailability. There's also a selfish panic that accompanies this recognition. The avoidant realizes they've lost something they didn't know they needed until it was gone. The unconditional positive regard, the patient love, the person who saw through their defenses to something worthy underneath. All of it has vanished, and they see in those dead eyes that it's not coming back, no matter what they do or say now. The moment for mattering has passed, and they missed it entirely while protecting themselves from the very intimacy they now desperately want to reclaim when they hear themselves described as someone who causes pain. The avoidant self-concept is carefully constructed to avoid seeing themselves as someone who hurts others. They view their emotional distance as self-protection, their unavailability as honesty, their withdrawal as necessary boundaries. They're not cruel in their own narrative. They're simply limited in what they can give. But there comes a moment when they hear themselves described by their partner or others in terms that shatter this protective self-image entirely. This moment might arrive when a partner finally articulates the cumulative damage with devastating clarity, not in an emotional outburst that the avoidant can dismiss as dramatic, but in a calm, factual recounting of how the avoidance patterns have systematically dismantled their sense of worth, security, and hope. The partner describes feeling abandoned while in the relationship, feeling unloved despite gestures of affection, feeling crazy for having normal emotional needs that the avoidant treated as excessive demands. The psychological impact comes from hearing their behavior described as a pattern of harm rather than isolated incidents. The avoidant can rationalize individual moments. They were stressed, they needed space, they weren't ready. But when someone maps out the pattern with clarity, showing how each withdrawal, each emotional shutdown, each moment of unavailability built on the previous one to create an architecture of pain, the avoidant cannot maintain their protective narrative. What makes this particularly devastating is hearing themselves compared to people who caused the avoidant their own early pain. The partner might say that the avoidant has replicated the same emotional abandonment that wounded them in childhood. They've become the distant parent, the unavailable caregiver, the person who makes love feel conditional and safety impossible. This comparison forces the avoidant to confront that they've perpetuated the very cycle of pain they swore they'd never inflict on others. The avoidant also experiences profound shame when they realize their partner has been in pain for far longer than they understood. They thought their partner was fine, managing, accepting of the relationship's limitations. But hearing the truth that their partner has been suffering, crying alone, questioning their own worth, feeling rejected and unwanted for months or years, creates a recognition of how deeply they've been in denial about their impact. This moment often includes hearing specific incidents recounted from the partner's perspective. The avoidant remembers these moments very differently. They needed space, they were protecting themselves, they were being honest about their limitations. But hearing how those same moments landed for their partner, as rejection, as proof of unworthiness, as confirmation that they were too much or not enough, forces a perspective shift the avoidant cannot undo. The breaking point intensifies when the avoidant realizes their partner has been protecting them from the truth of their own pain. The partner has been minimizing their hurt, accepting crumbs, convincing themselves that the avoidant's small gestures were enough. They've been managing the avoidant's emotions by hiding their own. And now, hearing the full truth of what their partner has endured while maintaining this protective facade, the avoidant sees both the depth of love they received and the callousness with which they treated that love. There's also a terrible recognition that all their justifications and rationalizations were lies they told themselves. They weren't setting healthy boundaries. They were withholding love. They weren't protecting their independence. They were avoiding vulnerability at their partner's expense. They weren't being honest about their limitations. They were using those limitations as permission to behave selfishly without consequence. Hearing themselves described accurately strips away every protective story they've constructed about their own behavior. When you stop fighting for them and they feel the terror of it, the avoidant has become accustomed to a particular dynamic. They withdraw, their partner pursues, they feel suffocated, they withdraw further, their partner tries harder. This dance feels familiar, predictable, and controllable. The avoidant has power in this dynamic because they set the distance and their partner adjusts. But when the partner finally stops fighting, stops pursuing, stops trying to win the avoidant's love and attention, something unprecedented happens in the avoidant's nervous system. They experience genuine terror. This terror is different from the anxiety the avoidant feels when someone gets too close. This is the deeper, more primal fear that they've been running from their entire life. The fear of being truly alone, truly unwanted, truly abandoned by someone who finally saw them clearly and chose to walk away. When the fighting stops, the avoidant can no longer tell themselves that their partner is too needy or too demanding. The partner has simply accepted the avoidant's implicit message that they don't want this relationship and is acting accordingly. The psychological breaking point occurs when the avoidant realizes the silence isn't strategic or temporary. Their partner hasn't stopped fighting to make them jealous or to manipulate them into missing them. They've stopped fighting because they've accepted defeat. They've recognized that the avoidant cannot or will not meet their emotional needs, and they've made the painful choice to stop destroying themselves in pursuit of someone who keeps running away. This recognition triggers the avoidant's deepest abandonment wounds. The very wounds that created their avoidant attachment in the first place now surface with overwhelming intensity. They're experiencing the abandonment they've been protecting themselves against for decades. And the cruel irony is that they engineered it themselves through their own emotional unavailability. They pushed someone away until that person had no choice but to stay away, and now they're feeling the terror of the very outcome their behavior was designed to create. The avoidant also experiences a devastating role reversal. They've spent the relationship feeling pursued, pressured, and overwhelmed by their partner's emotional needs. They've seen themselves as the one trying to escape an overly attached partner. But when the fighting stops, they suddenly find themselves in the position they put their partner in for months or years, desperate for attention, hoping for contact, analyzing every interaction for signs of renewed interest. This reversal creates profound cognitive dissonance and forces the avoidant to understand experientially what they put their partner through. What makes this terror particularly acute is that the avoidant recognizes they have no right to feel it. They're the one who created this situation through their consistent rejection and withdrawal. They have no moral standing to complain or demand that their partner return to fighting for them. The terror comes mixed with shame, guilt, and the recognition that this pain is entirely self-inflicted and utterly deserved. The breaking point deepens when the avoidant reaches out tentatively and receives responses that are polite but emotionally empty. Their partner isn't angry or hurt anymore. They're simply done. They respond to practical questions, maintain basic civility, but the warmth is gone, the hope is gone, the willingness to be heard again is gone. The avoidant discovers that indifference is far more terrifying than anger because anger still contains emotional investment. Indifference means they no longer matter. This terror also includes the recognition that they may have destroyed their last chance at genuine love. The avoidant sees that they had someone who loved them despite their limitations, who tried to understand their wounds, who gave them space while still holding on. And they systematically broke that person's heart through their inability to reciprocate or appreciate what they were being given. The loss feels permanent in a way that activates every abandonment fear the avoidant has spent their life trying to avoid. When they see you, thriving without them, and it breaks something inside. The avoidance breaking point intensifies when they witness their former partner not just surviving without them, but genuinely thriving. This observation creates a psychological crisis because it contradicts multiple core beliefs the avoidant has held about themselves and the relationship. They believed they were necessary, that their partner couldn't function without them, that they held some unique importance in that person's life. Seeing evidence to the contrary shatters these protective beliefs and forces a painful reevaluation. The avoidant observes their former partner engaging with life in ways they never did during the relationship. There's a lightness to them, an energy, an openness that was absent when they were together. The partner is pursuing goals, developing friendships, exploring interests, and generally inhabiting their life with a fullness that makes it clear they're no longer carrying the weight of an emotionally unavailable relationship. This vitality is visible and undeniable, and it tells the avoidant a truth they cannot rationalize away. This recognition breaks something inside the avoidant because it reveals that they weren't the prize they believed themselves to be. In fact, their presence in their partner's life was diminishing rather than enhancing it. The relationship they thought was sustainable, if imperfect, was actually draining their partner of life force, joy, and possibility. They were not a positive force in this person's life. They were dead weight that their partner is visibly relieved to have shed. The psychological impact includes a devastating reassessment of the entire relationship. The avoidant realizes that their partner's pursuit of them wasn't evidence of the avoidant's value, but evidence of the partner's hope, loyalty, and willingness to see potential where little actually existed. The partner wasn't fighting for them because they were worth fighting for. They were fighting because that's who the partner was as a person. And now that same person is directing that energy toward themselves and their own life, with visible positive results. The avoidant also confronts the uncomfortable truth that they were the problem in the relationship. They've spent months or years believing that the relationship's difficulties stemmed from incompatibility, poor timing, or their partner's excessive needs. But seeing their partner thrive without them suggests something different. That the core issue was the avoidant's emotional unavailability, and the toll it took on their partner's well-being. The problem wasn't the relationship dynamics. It was the avoidant's contribution to those dynamics. There's a particular sting when the avoidant realizes their former partner is now available to give and receive the kind of love the avoidant could never access. The partner has emerged from the relationship, not hardened or closed off, but somehow more open, more themselves, more capable of genuine connection. They've healed from the wounds the avoidant inflicted and moved into a space of possibility that no longer includes the avoidant. This openness that the avoidant could never inspire or receive is now directed elsewhere, potentially towards someone who can appreciate and reciprocate it. The breaking point also involves recognizing that the life the avoidant is living, the one they protected so fiercely by maintaining emotional distance, is less fulfilling than the life their former partner is now creating. The avoidant chose independence and emotional safety over connection, convinced they were making the wise choice. But witnessing their former partners flourishing after leaving the relationship suggests that the avoidant chose poorly. They protected themselves right into a smaller, lonelier, less vibrant life than the one they could have had. Moreover, the avoidant experiences a profound sense of loss mixed with the recognition that they have no right to that feeling. They're losing someone they never fully claimed, someone they kept at a distance, someone they repeatedly told through their actions that they didn't truly want. The loss is real and devastating, but it comes with the bitter knowledge that it's entirely self-created, and that reaching out would be selfish given how much damage they've already done. When the guilt finally catches up, and they can't outrun it anymore. For months or years, the avoidant has managed to keep guilt at bay through a sophisticated system of psychological defenses. They've rationalized their behavior, minimized their impact, blamed their partner's sensitivity, and convinced themselves that they were simply being honest about their limitations. But there comes a point when these defenses collapse under the accumulated weight of undeniable truth, and the guilt floods in with overwhelming force. This breaking point often arrives in quiet moments when the avoidant is alone with their thoughts and cannot distract themselves from what they know to be true. They remember specific moments when their partner needed them and they withdrew. They recall the hope in their partner's eyes that they systematically extinguished. They think about all the times their partner tried to communicate their pain and the avoidant dismissed it as drama or neediness. Each memory becomes a weight they can no longer rationalize away. The guilt is particularly acute because the avoidant recognizes that their partner's crime was loving them. That's the offense that earned rejection, withdrawal, and emotional cruelty. Their partner didn't betray them, didn't hurt them, didn't deserve the treatment they received. They simply loved an avoidant person and paid dearly for that love. This recognition strips away every justification the avoidant has constructed about their behavior. The psychological burden intensifies when the avoidant realizes they were given numerous chances to do better and squandered every one. Their partner communicated their needs clearly, gave the avoidant space to work on themselves, offered forgiveness for past hurts, and remained hopeful despite repeated disappointments. The avoidant was offered a roadmap to keeping this person's love, and they chose not to follow it. They cannot claim ignorance or confusion. They knew what was needed and chose their defenses instead. This guilt also comes with the recognition that their partner will carry the wounds the avoidant inflicted into future relationships. The avoidant has shaped how this person understands love, trust, and their own worthiness. They've contributed to attachment wounds that will take years to heal. The damage extends beyond the relationship itself into the broader trajectory of their former partner's emotional life and capacity for future connection. The breaking point deepens when the avoidant realizes there's no way to make amends that doesn't center their own need for absolution. Apologizing would be asking their former partner to perform more emotional labor on their behalf, to process the avoidant's guilt and offer forgiveness that would relieve the avoidant's suffering. Even in their guilt and regret, reaching out would be another selfish act that prioritizes the avoidant's emotional needs over their former partner's healing and peace. The avoidant is also forced to confront that this pattern likely extends beyond this one relationship. They begin to see the trail of wounded people behind them, each person who tried to love them and left diminished by the experience. The guilt is not just about one person or one relationship. It's about a lifetime of causing pain while protecting themselves from vulnerability. This larger recognition transforms guilt into something approaching existential despair about who they are and the impact they have on others who dare to care about them.